Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the new Kershaw Launch 23, an awesome automatic side opening automatic USA manufactured knife. It's very important these days to distinguish the difference between manufactured and assembled as far as in the USA. Lots of companies out there claiming made in the USA, and what they mean is we manufacture them in China and then they come over here in parts and we put them together over here. These are actually manufactured in the USA, making them, to my knowledge, the lowest cost, as far as the quality knives go, the lowest cost USA made side opening automatic knives out there. Super recommendable. The entire Launch series line, I'll link it down in the description, as well as this knife in particular. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to Kai USA for sending this in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Make sure your notifications are on for the Metal Complex YouTube channel. I've got a very interesting thing I want to talk about today in regards to this knife and other Launch series knives, and we'll get to that point, but let's get through specs here really quickly. Overall length of the Launch 23 is coming in at 7.5 inches. That sounds small. It really doesn't feel small in hand, but it's just about 1/4 inch longer than the Spyderco Para 3. 7.5, and then 3.25 inches for the blade length. 3.25, is that right? I'm sorry, no, I was wrong. I was right about that. I was wrong about the cutting edge length. Blade length is 3.25, cutting edge is 3 1/8. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the 8010 and my own Excalibur, you can see here, it's nowhere near the size of these knives, but these knives are big boys at about 8.5 inches. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. This knife is just a hair longer than the Spyderco Para 3. Put it up on top because the camera's at an angle, so anything that's at the bottom looks massive. But it's just a little bit longer than the Spyderco Para 3. It's definitely shorter than the PM2, though I will point out has very nearly the same amount of cutting edge. And then let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How is the action? Kershaw Launch Series knives don't typically have the same amount of power as, say, ProTech or Microtech, and this is one of those. It doesn't need to, though, and I think some people are a little bit intimidated for good reason with the power that's associated with some of those more expensive automatic knives. I've always maintained that when you push the button, it needs to have enough power to make it out into the open position and lock out, right? So this is a good test right here. If I hold the button and just move it back a little bit, is that still enough spring tension to push it out into the open position? And the answer is yes, it is. And it doesn't need to have any more power than that. Some people like the satisfaction of a super powerful side opening automatic knife, and you could make the argument that after a while with dirt and debris buildup, the more powerful coil springs will ensure that the knife continues to lock out, or at least better than a weaker coil spring. I think most of the time that can be alleviated by simply blowing your knife out with compressed air, right? Or, maintenance every now and then. You don't necessarily have to take your knife apart all the time, but every now and then just cleaning it, stuff like that. This is plenty powerful, and I don't see this causing an issue for anybody. The Kershaw Launch Series knives I've always considered to be plenty powerful, especially, it's not like power equals value or anything like that. They just typically don't use as powerful coil spring, but this is definitively weaker. I have to point this out. I just reviewed this one, the Launch 22. This is way more powerful. In this knife, and I'm gonna guess the 16 and the 21 and perhaps a couple of other models, I believe they are using different size coil springs in some of these. Now, another interesting note here is that this guy, the 22, is in Magna Cut, while this guy, the 23, is in 154 cm. So I'm wondering if they're separating the tiers of these knives, not only by power, but by the blade steel. I wonder if there's a correlation there. I actually don't know. But I will say this. This knife, and you can see it when I deploy it, right? When I deploy this knife, it's fine. Way more powerful. This is pretty darn close to what I expect from ProTech. Does that mean this knife is better? No. It just is a more powerful deployment. And I think for people who don't really want or need or are slightly intimidated by that power. I think that you'll really enjoy the automatic power of knives like the 23 because this is a much friendlier deployment. It could also be that even people who are not necessarily intimidated by the extreme force of a knife like this simply just don't prefer that much power. It's like, well, I just don't need my life to be that dramatic. I just want it to deploy and we're good to go. In which case, again, good reason to pick up something like this. If they are using two different sizes of coil springs, I think that's a good idea, right? But I think that it should be labeled. If we're using different sizes of coil springs, and this goes for every company that makes lots of different automatic knives like ProTech or Microtech or whoever, if you have variance in the amount of tension that throws the blade for one reason or another, there needs to be some sort of like high power, low power rating system, right? High, medium, low, or whatever. I think that would be a good idea. So if the gentleman from Kai, the person who contacts me, if you want to clarify that in the email or down in the comments, I think that would be really cool. But if you guys are using different systems, I think that they should be labeled that way, and this information should extend to retailers so that buyers know what they're buying. That I think that would be super helpful. But anyways. The action's really good. You push the button and it deploys. I really don't have an issue with it. The blade or the button is just slightly above the frame. This would be essentially impossible to fire in your pocket, right? I mean, like, set this down on the table and just push, but with my thumb touching the surrounding surfaces. I literally can't. I cannot. I'm putting as much force as I cannot get it to deploy. And there, I almost got it. A little bit more and it would have gone. But that amount of force is not going to occur naturally in your pocket, because in your pocket, it's going to be putting pressure on the surrounding surface. So don't worry about that. Not going to happen. If you have something else in your pocket, I think it's technically possible for that item to get wedged between your leg and the button. And then if you push up against something, perhaps. So just be cognizant of that. If you're going to carry this knife, I would say just keep the knife in your knife pocket and nothing else, and you should be good to go. And also make sure switchblades, because that's what this is, are legal to carry and own and all of that in your state, and make sure you check the blade length and all of that. Let's do carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's a little bit thinner, actually. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This is a very, very easy knife to carry, very compact, lightweight, etc. Didn't have any issues with it. Let's go ahead and weigh it. So for materials, we are looking at aluminum and then a two-tone kind of black wash and satin CPM 154 blade, which actually does it looks pretty good with the black aluminum. I'm not typically a two-tone guy on blades, but it's fine. And it feels very Kershaw to do the two-tone thing. So anyways, there we go. The weight comes in at 3.3 ounces, which is really, really great, and it's almost a perfect ratio of blade length to overall weight, and the balance is right behind the pivot, which is excellent. I think that's awesome. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. We have a T8 pivot, and back here I'm not even going to change it out. We have T6 for the screws. Now, Kershaw has shown that they are willing to put T8 body screws on their knives. We have new T8 body screws that I've never seen before. Perhaps I'm sure that they've done them before. I've never seen these on a Launch Series knife. I wish that they would just do them on all of their knives and get rid of T6, but I doubt that that'll happen. T6 is fine. You're more likely to strip your bit or the screw, even when you have the right sized head. And even if you're using bits like Wea or Wera or whoever claims the ultimate, I've never stripped a bagger. Yeah, well, you get the right screw in the right head and just exactly the right or wrong circumstance, and I promise it's going to happen. As far as disassembling knives on this channel and taking apart knives, the reason that I have such a vendetta against T6 is because it doesn't really matter what bit I use, as long as it's the right size. Of course, it doesn't matter what brand I use, right? Using the right size bit. T6 and smaller is the cause of destruction of the screw and the bit or the bit in the vast majority of circumstances. So I hate them. But it's fine. I'm being dramatic. It's fine. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. But I will advise against taking apart automatic knives in general, because putting them back together is not super fun. You have to work against the tension of the coil spring. So if you can, wash the knife out, the pivot area out with hot soapy water, blow it out with compressed air, and then add your favorite lubricant / protective coating for the inside, and you should be good to go. That's how I would do it. But anyways, let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness, which should be easy to do because the calipers are right out in front of my face. Okay, found them. So blade stock thickness is 119 thousandths. Okay, so not super duper thick. Meat and potatoes time. There's not a lot here that's different, like, you know, like this makes this a standout Launch series knife. It's just different enough to kind of continue the Launch series, but it's not like, you know, oh my gosh, it's dramatically different versus, you know, the other Launch series knives. I think it kind of looks like the new ZT Auto, kind of. I don't know if that was the idea here, to just make like a Kershaw version of it, but kind of. It also has a profile that is similar to, you know, if you're looking at this and thinking that looks like the this or the that, it does. It looks like 70 kajabillion different things because it's a very, very generic handle profile. I mean, if you look at this, you look at the handle, you're like, any type of blade could be hanging off the end of that. And then we have this sort of elongated clip point or almost trailing point blade with a nice, fairly thin edge, right? Kershaw does a really good job with their factory edge. Man, they have come so far with their quality control. It's just incredible. CPM 154, which is a great blade steel. It's a very, very well-rounded blade steel. It's not going to be as tough or hold an edge like MagnaCut. In fact, it's not going to be as stainless. MagnaCut really is a confusing steel. The only benefit you'll have in CPM 154 over MagnaCut is that it will be easier to sharpen, which is, you know, a totally valid preference for some people. I still like CPM 154. I think it's a good steel. It just doesn't, you know, it doesn't hold up as well as you know, steels like MagnaCut. But it's plenty good, and there's nothing wrong with it. You'll continue to see CPM 154 even in multi-$1,000 custom knives because of its general good performance and its ability to take pretty much any finish. So that's primarily why we see that. It's still a good steel, and I expect it to be around for a long time. Not really anything else to say there. We have black aluminum scales, which are fine. A little bit of diagonal texturing going on, or milling going on here. We have mounting positions for the pocket clip for left or right hand. Then we have the lanyard hole here. Pocket clip is short and has a pretty mild bill there and really pretty medium retention in and out of the pocket. Very, very easy. This is, of course, made in the USA. Not all Kershaw knives are manufactured in the USA. If you go to Walmart and you see a Kershaw knife for $40, it's going to be made in China, most likely. It'll say right on the knife, though. But some Kershaw knives are made in the USA, and they tend to be a little more expensive. All of the Launch series knives are manufactured in the USA. The blade does lock out completely and totally solid. There is no lock stick. There's no pivot lash. And it's smooth. I mean, working against the tension here, plenty smooth in the pivot. And a nice little click into the closed position with that plunge lock. This one appears to be slightly off-centered, which isn't typical for newer Kershaw knives, but far from impossible. It's likely I can adjust the pivot and the body screws and center this up fairly easily, but it's not necessarily something that you should have to do as the buyer. So real quick, let's see if it's just the fact that the pivot has come slightly loose, in which case tightening it up just a little bit will solve that problem. Let's see. Just a little turn there, and have we brought it back? Nope, I don't think so. Can we go a little bit more and keep that action smooth? Does he want to go? No, he doesn't. This one's just a little bit off. Oh, it doesn't want to deploy at all now. So this would require backing the pivot out, adjusting the body screws, doing the paper trick, and then putting everything back together, screwing everything back down, and seeing if we could adjust the centering. Most of the time, the Kershaws that are sent to me, I mean, and you know, they could be hand-picked because they're sent directly from Kai. Most of them are centered. In fact, I can't remember the last time I had an off-center Kershaw. So it might just be a little bit of a weird situation here, but still something that should be pointed out. In 2025, all of these knives, especially at this price point, should come from the factory perfectly centered. So, but I expect that the vast majority of you picking this knife up will probably get a centered blade. Price tag, $153. Last time I checked on Blade HQ, pretty good price. Everything except for the mild centering issue, which I don't expect to be a mass problem. I think this is good. I think, you know, really this is going to come down to, do you like how it looks, and are you okay with this being on the weaker side in terms of the coil spring, right? If not, then maybe look into picking up the 16, the 21, or the 22. The 22 definitely has a more powerful spring. But yeah, I think it would be really cool to find out if there are 2 or more different sizes of coil springs that Kershaw uses, and to see if that, they would be able to clarify which models those are. That would be cool. At the end of all this, is the knife recommendable? Yeah, it is. This is a good knife. I don't think it's a standout in the Launch series, but I think it's good. I think if you already bought it, I think you bought a good knife. If you're on the fence about it, don't be. 150, just slightly more than 150 bucks, I think is a good price. This is a good knife. You're good to go. That's going to be it for me today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.